Demographically speaking, the country of Turkey is one of the most intriguing in the old world, being linguistically, ethnically, and culturally distinct from almost all of their neighbors. But they're a part of a larger ethno-cultural group known as the Turkic world, being united in their uses of the various Turkic languages and Turkic culture. However, there are vast differences between the terms Turkic and Turkish, and huge varieties among the Turkic peoples. Turkic peoples are unique as the dozens of Turkic ethnic groups are very phenotypically distinct, with there being Turkic peoples from North Asia, Central Asia, Russia, the Middle East, North Africa, and Europe. And these differences largely stem from the conquests and migration brought about by a slew of different empires, which we'll discuss in this video. As mentioned earlier, the Turkic peoples are defined as any ethnic group that natively speaks a Turkic language, a language family that has been hypothesized to be related to various others such as Mongolian or Uralic. The original Turkic homeland has been postulated to be in Northeast Asia, or Siberia as it's known now, and the Turkic peoples migrated southwest into Central Asia shortly before the rise of the Mongol Empire, which nearly wiped out the former Central Asian population, or at least heavily negatively impacted their numbers. When the Turkic peoples migrated into these territories in the 8th century AD, they gradually assimilated and mixed with the old people groups that lived there, an Indo-European population who were intermediate between the Iranians of the Middle East and Slavic peoples of Eastern Europe. However, the Turkic languages would become dominant in all of Central Asia, replacing the Indo-Iranian languages. The original Turkic peoples that lived in Siberia are actually still around, and their phenotype is fairly North Asian, and most of the various ethnicities can be seen as shades of purple on this map, with the Yakuts, Tuvans, Altays, and Caucasus. These groups are all located in modern Russia, and Yakuts and Caucasus are mostly Russian Orthodox, while the Altai are split between Orthodoxy and animistic religions, while the Tuvans are overwhelmingly Buddhist. The Central Asian Turks, on the other hand, are almost entirely Muslim, and most of these groups actually have their own countries, such as the Kazakhs, Kyrgyz, Turkmen, and Uzbeks, although the Karakalpaks of Uzbekistan, Khorasani Turks of Iran, and Uyghur people of China do not have their own sovereign nations. Because they're a result of centuries of intermixing, these Turkic Central Asians are extremely heterogeneous when it comes to appearance, and all these groups are a combination of East Asian, European, and Middle Eastern DNA, causing some to look more Asian than anything, while others may have more European or Middle Eastern features. But on average, the genetic breakdown for Central Asian Turks is about 55% Eastern Eurasian and 45% Western Eurasian, meaning European and Middle Eastern. Now, the Bashkir, Chuvash, and Volga Tartar peoples of Russia are a bit different as they have much more Western Eurasian admixture than those from Central Asia, seeing their closer proximity to Europe and the Slavic peoples, and for this reason they're considerably more European in appearance rather than East Asian, yet some retain predominantly East Asian features such as the epicanthic fold, while others may be able to pass as Russian or other European. The Bashkirs and Tartars are also mostly Muslim, although with small atheist and Christian minorities, while the Chuvash are overwhelmingly Orthodox Christian and have a much greater Western Eurasian gene pool and generally identify more with Europeans than other Turkic peoples, despite speaking a Turkic language. The Nogay people are another phenotypically Central Asian Turkic group, mostly from the Caucasus region of Russia, being the successors of the Nogay Horde, which were the successors of the Golden Horde, which was one of the many successors of the Mongol Empire. Now, this brings us to the westernmost division, that being the many Turkic people groups of the Middle East, North Africa, and Europe, who are without a doubt the most numerous and possibly most influential in the modern era. But how did a language native to North Asia end up in Southeast Europe and Anatolia? The Oghuz Turks migrated from Central Asia around the 10th century AD and established the Seljuk Empire, spanning almost all of the northern Middle East. However, they were largely a dominant minority, with the initial number of Central Asian migrants being fairly small. As mentioned previously, as the Mongol Empire swept through Eurasia, slaughtering entire villages and burning cities to the ground, when they reached the relatively more densely populated regions of the Middle East, such as Persia, Anatolia, and Mesopotamia, the death toll was immense. However, the gene pool wasn't significantly altered. The Seljuk Turks assimilated the former natives of Anatolia, who were Indo-European speakers, in a process similar to the Central Asian Turks, however without the large-scale genetic shifts in the population. The Middle Eastern Turks are clearly far different in appearance than the Central Asian Turks, with various sources stating that Central Asian admixture on average is around 5 to 20%, meaning that Eastern Eurasian admixture among Turkish people is minimal when compared to Kazakhs or Uzbeks. The Middle Eastern Turkic people groups are almost all remnants of the former Ottoman Empire, which spanned a very large area including almost all of Southwest Asia, most of North Africa and the Balkans, and as such have huge degrees of admixture from the various native peoples that surround them. The largest Turkic group would have to be the Turks from Turkey proper, which is also known as Anatolia or Asia Minor, who make up around 70% of the Turkish state and are dominant in the Turkic world. There are also minorities of ethnic Turks in many areas of the former Ottoman Empire, especially in the Balkans, making up a little under 10% in Bulgaria, with smaller amounts in places like Macedonia, Albania, the former Yugoslavia, and the island of Cyprus. There are also Turks in northern Mesopotamia and the Levant, including Iraq, Lebanon, and Syria, and the region of Turkmeneli, and are known as Turkoman or Turkmen, not to be confused with the Turkmen from the Central Asian country of Turkmenistan. And their language is somewhat intermediate between Turkish and Azeri, and there are also remnants of former Ottoman officials and settlers, numbering around 3 to 5 million in total. The other region of major Turkish settlement during the Ottoman period was North Africa, with there being over 10 million people of partial Turkish descent in the Maghreb and Egypt, known as Kulugli, who are mostly a result of Ottoman Turks settling in the region and taking Arab or Berber wives, although the Kulugli mostly speak Arabic as opposed to a Turkish dialect or a separate Turkish language. Now, during the degradation of the Ottoman Empire in the late 19th and early 20th century, as the Balkans and Middle Eastern territories began to gain their independence, any and all Turkish culture was being enthusiastically purged from their societies. This unfortunately led to a mass persecution of the Turkish minorities living in the Maghreb, the Levant, and the Balkans, who were seen as foreigners and invaders, and during this period around 1900 to 1920, literally millions of Turkish families from the Ottoman Empire, and even places in the Russian Empire that had Muslim Turkic populations, such as the Crimean Tartars, were fleeing from these territories and settling in Anatolia. Even after the dissolution of the Ottoman Empire and the independence of the Balkan countries, non-Turkic Islamic minorities such as Muslim Greeks, known as Romaika, Muslim Bulgarians, known as Pomaks, or Bosniaks, who were Muslim Slavs, still poured into Turkey in large numbers, fearing the backlash and anti-Islamic sentiments in these newly independent countries. These migrants were known as muhajirs and were essential to the Turkish population, being one of the main reasons for the extreme population growth in Turkey in the 20th century, with the population growing exponentially after 1920. The population of Turkey exploded from only 10 million in 1920 to almost 80 million today, a change of 800%, with the unusually high growth rates being contributed to the expatriation of ethnic Turks and other Muslims from the former Ottoman Empire, and exceptionally high birth rates, which you can see when compared to a country like Germany, whose population has remained fairly stagnant in the past 60 years, while Turkey's has skyrocketed during the same period, although birth rates have lost considerable momentum in recent times. There were also a large number of non-Turkic Muslim groups from the Caucasus migrating to Turkey, such as the Chechens, Abkhazians, Ossetians, Kabardin-Lays, and possibly the most significant of them all, the Circassians, who came from Circassia in southern Russia, where almost the entire population fled to Anatolia during the Russian conquest of the Caucasus in the late 1800s. It's estimated that around 10% of Turkey's population has some Caucasian descent from this wave of migrants, and at least 20% has ancestry from the muhajirs from Southeast Europe and the rest of the former Ottoman Empire, which has significantly impacted the genetics of the modern Turkish people, although it is difficult to determine just how much, as Turkey hasn't held an ethnic census since 1960. The other major Turkic group in the Middle East would be the Azeris, who inhabit not only the country of Azerbaijan, but parts of eastern Anatolia, Georgia, and a large chunk of northwest Iran, known as southern Azerbaijan, where possibly more ethnic Azeris live than the actual country of Azerbaijan itself. Azeris are heavily related to and closely connected to Turkish people, with Azeri and Turkish being partially mutually intelligible, although it's incredibly unlikely that they'd unite as a single country anytime soon. There are also other Turkic minorities in Iran, such as the Kashkai, and in the Caucasus, such as the Karachi, Kumyks, and Balkars, who are all Islamic and are similar in appearance to the Turks and Azeris, along with one of the two oldest Turkic groups in Europe, that being the Crimean Tartars. And although Crimean Tartar is a Kipchak language like Kazakh and Kyrgyz, because of the huge influence of the Ottoman Empire, their language is now closer to Turkish, with some Crimean Tartar and Turkish speakers actually being able to understand each other. The last Turkic group, and one of the more interesting, are the Gagauz people from Moldova and Ukraine, descended from Turkic migrants from before the Ottoman era, and as such, they are one of the only Orthodox Christian Turkic ethnic groups in the region, and genetically are almost entirely European, having mixed with the surrounding population for hundreds of years. There are large diasporas of Turkish and Turkic peoples all around the world, including 9 million Turkic people in Europe, mostly Turks in Germany, Benelux, France, the UK, and Bulgaria, although this excludes Eastern Thrace, which is the European part of Turkey. 1.5 million live in the United States and Canada, mostly New York, Massachusetts, and New Jersey, 200,000 in Oceania, and around 100,000 in Latin America. The Turkic peoples are an incredibly interesting group, seeing how they can greatly differ in appearance, being North Asian, Middle Eastern, European, and everything in between, and religion-wise, having Muslims, Christians, Buddhists, and even some Jewish groups, and they went from being a small collection of tribes north of Mongolia to one of the most influential groups in Middle Eastern, European, and African history. Be sure to let me know your thoughts on the Turkic peoples and the differences and similarities between them. Oh, and by the way, we just hit 50,000 subscribers, which is just freaking incredible. Thank you all so much. Be sure to check out my second channel where I'll finally be releasing a Q&A later today. As always, thanks for watching, everyone. This has been Mason, and I'll see you next time.